Welcome to Social Aloe Ministries, where we are committed to glorifying God while exposing the devil. Leaving someone's ministry does not mean that you have forsaken the Lord. Some of you, you're in a ministry right now, and you've been getting convicted by the Holy Spirit to leave. But in a lot of cases, you've heard a minister say that those who have left is because they're doing an ungodly thing, because they have backslidden. But all those things are witchcraft. It is a form of manipulation. And I can say that I've been down that road myself, where I left a ministry, and the head of that ministry claimed that I left because I had turned my back on that ministry and that I've turned my back on God. And I laughed because that person just demonstrated a total lack of wisdom. And it was also a lie, because if you go to my Facebook page, for the duration, you will see that it's like at no point in time that it seems as if I broke away from the Lord. And that's what some of you are experiencing. And you may have witnessed it where someone left, and then a minister is saying that is because that person backslid and that person has forsaken the Lord. In some cases, that minister may tell you to disassociate yourself from the individual, unfriend and unfollow. And a part of that is a part of that witchcraft, because if you were to stay in tune with that or to stay in touch with that person, you'd realize that that person has not gotten away from the Lord. You may even realize that the person has actually gotten closer to the Lord as a result of leaving that ministry. So again, if you feel as if the Holy Spirit of the Lord is convicting you to leave a ministry for whatever reason, listen to the Holy Spirit of the Lord and not a person. Do not let your obedience to a person end up being disobedience to God. And some of you can relate where you were in an abusive relationship. You left. The person you were in a relationship with tried to get you back. And it made you laugh. Or other response. Because that person maybe tried to convince you that the two of you are meant to be together. But after having been away from the person, you realize how much better your life is without the person. And you realize that that person is a messenger of Satan. And what the person is trying to do is like a narcissist, trying to get what is called narcissistic supply. Someone to feed on. Someone to prey on. And that is what a lot of ministers do. They seek people to prey on. People to be in subjection to them. So they don't want people to leave. And they truly don't want people to draw closer to the Lord. And even in some cases, they don't want people to truly fulfill their God-ordained destiny. So like that abusive relationship where a person leaves and realizes that he or she is better off without that individual. But it's the abuser who usually reaches out begging the individual to come back. And that is what some ministers do. They try to beg people to come back into an abusive situation. Whichever case applies to you, whether a ministry or a relationship, do not go back to an abusive individual. Do not go back to an abusive individual. And there are times when it may be hard. And for example, if you love that person, or maybe you loved some aspects of that ministry, and you may be tempted to go back. A lot of times we have what is called, or what scientists call a positivity bias. We tend to remember the good things. And it's only when we get back into the situation where we realize how awful it was. And we see an example of this in Numbers 11. I mentioned before that in Numbers 11, when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness that there was a lot of complaining. And I'll read Numbers 11, starting in verse 1 through 6. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burnt among them and consumed them that were in the outermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses. And when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again, and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish. And I'm smiling already. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, and the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. The people started lusting for the fish, the leeks, the cucumbers, the onions. And then they said, which we did eat in Egypt freely. Which we did eat in Egypt freely. A lot of times Egypt is symbolic of a place of bondage. So there are times when you may be lusting after the things that you experienced while in bondage. And at the beginning, he mentioned about the Lord consuming people with fire. And you may think, oh, it's an angry God. He's just angry for everything. That wasn't the case. We're going to back this up to Exodus 3 and give you context regarding why the Lord would be so angry with these people. So in Exodus 3, verses 7 through 10, it states, and this was actually the Lord speaking to Moses when he called him. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by the reasons of their taskmasters, and I know their sorrows. I could have ended it right there. The Lord heard the people crying. He heard their sorrows at the hand of their taskmasters. And the people were lusting to go back into that. But they talked about how they ate freely. No, they were in slavery. They were in bondage. They weren't eating freely. They were paying a price. But they had forgotten how bad it was. But I guarantee they would have remembered if the Lord had let them go back. Sometimes the Lord has to save us from ourselves. When the Lord gets you out of a position, a bad situation, do not go back into it. Because when you start crying out to him again, it may take much longer for him to respond. So I'll continue. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out to that land unto a good land, and a large, and unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me. Again, their cry made it unto the Lord. And I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Again, the people were talking about how they're eating freely in Egypt, and they were lusting after. I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And then they started complaining. Please, do not let the Lord deliver you from a bad situation and then go right back into where he delivered you from. I know the Lord has delivered me from some things, and I will never go back. I will never go back. And glory to God, there are certain things that I have never lusted to go back into because I know how bad it was. And I'll just add a side note where sometimes it helps to keep a journal. Because a lot of times, with the positivity bias that I mentioned, you may start thinking about the good things. But if you have a journal and you refer to that journal and you realize the things that you went through, you will be reminded that you were better off without maybe people who are trying to pull you back into their circle. A pastor who's trying to pull you back into that ministry that was oppressive, kind of like the situation the Israelites were when they were in Egypt. Don't let anyone sweet talk you. Do not let anyone sweet talk you to make it seem as if you need to come back. No, the Lord got you out for a reason. And I'll close with a reminder the Lord gave in two instances. In John 8, the woman who'd been caught committing adultery, the Lord got her out of that situation. And when he asked if anyone had condemned her, she said, no one. Then he said, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Jesus got out of that situation, a bad situation. She was facing death. But Jesus told her, go and sin no more. The lame man who was by the pool at Bethsaida, the Lord healed him. When he saw him later, he said, thou art whole. Go and sin no more, lest something worse overtake thee. So whichever one of those apply to you, whether it's simply go and sin no more, or go and sin no more, lest something worse happen to you. When the Lord gets you out, stay out. Don't look back. If it means blocking people, block them. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. God bless you.